So our psalmody for Reformation Sunday is Psalm 46. And the reason for this is it's the inspiration behind Martin Luther's celebrated hymn, "A Mighty Fortress Is Our God," that we're going to be singing after the sermon today. This said, as I was reading through this psalm at the beginning of the week, I was struck by how applicable it is to our current global situation. You see, Psalm 46 is a psalm for impossible circumstances, moments when the world seems upside down and hope appears lost. And to be honest, that's an appropriate description of the way things seem in the present. Whether we're thinking about social unrest in the nation, wars and rumors of wars sweeping across the globe, heated political battles, economic uncertainty, and really just a general weariness in our hearts from everything that's going on, we are living in impossible circumstances. Therefore, we need the message of this psalm. So let's waste no time and dive right in. The author begins with the good news that undergirds the whole thing. He says, God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in times of trouble. I mean, notice how objective that statement is. It doesn't depend on how you think or how you feel. Whether you acknowledge it or not, God is for his people a refuge and a strength, a place of safety. And more than this, he's not just with us in times of trouble. The psalm says he is an ever-present help. What this verse is communicating is that in times of distress, God is a help that is intensively found. So with that truth as the backdrop, then, the author continues by looking at the chaos he sees in the world around him. Therefore, i.e., because of who God is, we will not fear. Though mountains be moved into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble at its swelling. There is so much imagery going on here. First, that which the author and his people thought were unmovable, i.e. mountains, are now being swallowed up by that which is chaotic, restless, and menacing, i.e. the sea. In verse 6, the author dispenses with the metaphors, and he gives us a clear picture of what he's talking about, saying, the nations rage and the kingdoms move. In other words, the psalmist is writing these words from a place of political upheaval among the nations of the world that is threatening to wreak havoc upon the earth. And I couldn't help but identify with the author's words here. With the ever-increasing tension in the Middle East, it seems like one poor decision could ignite a tinderbox. Add to that rumors of wars with China and Taiwan, or the conflict that's going on in the Ukraine. At times, it feels like this fire has already been lit. Once more, circumstances in our own country seem to be just as tenuous, be it political, educational, economical, material, medical. That which was found unmovable as mountains in our own nation is being swallowed up by a chaotic ocean. And yet our author says, we do not have to fear the craziness because God is our refuge and our strength and an ever-present help in times of struggle. So this all begs the question, how is that true? How is God our refuge and strength and an ever-present help in times of trouble? Well, in contrast to the roaring, foaming, and swelling seas of chaos, the author writes, there is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy habitation of the Most High. God is in the midst of her, she shall not be moved. God will help her when morning dawns. There's a lot going on in these verses too, so let's break it apart. First, the imagery of a life-giving river is all over Scripture, starting with the river that flowed from Eden to water the earth, to Revelation's description of a river that flows from the throne of God to bring healing to the nations, and all the rivers in between. The constant in these images is God's presence. Wherever God is savingly present, a river flows to make glad his people. And for us in the church, this promise couldn't be more real and therefore encouraging. Amid the raging seas of global chaos, social madness, and political instability, there flows a river wherever 2 or 3 are gathered to hear God's word and to receive his sacraments. For wherever God is savingly present, there is a stream of life to make us glad. A second interesting part about this verse is, and really the whole psalm, is the use of the word moved, which the author uses 2 other times. First, he said the mountains are moved into the heart of the sea, and that the kingdoms are being moved. Now, in contrast to this, where creation seems to be unraveling and the nations and the kingdoms move and totter, we're told that the people of God, i.e. the church, quote, shall not be moved. Because why? God is in the midst of her. Friends, these words are real for us, even at this very moment. Right now, as I'm speaking these words, God is present. And in mere moments, we will partake of that presence under the auspices of bread and wine. And because God is present, no matter what happens in the world around us, we shall not be moved. And a third interesting part of this section is found where the author says, God will help her when morning dawns. The phrase "when morning dawns" in the Hebrew is found in only one other place in the Bible, and that's in Exodus 14:27, where following Israel's trek through the sea as on dry ground, it says that Moses stretched out his hand over the sea when morning dawned, and the sea returned to its normal course. And as we know from the story, that's when the Egyptian armies drowned. In other words, amid the political upheaval that was threatening God's people, the psalmist is pointing them back to Israel's history when God kept his promises. As he did for his people of old, so he will do for his people in the future. At the break of day, what threatens us will be overthrown by the Lord. In short, God's enemies don't stand a chance. This then brings us to the refrain of the psalm, which occurs again at the end. In words that should be familiar to us, the psalmist says, Yahweh of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Again, this part is filled with interesting language as well. One, God is referred to as Yahweh, which was his special name that he revealed to Israel. So he's pointing Israel to their special relationship with him. 2, God is described as the commander of heaven's armies. And really, that should give them confidence as to what they're facing. 3, the Hebrew the author uses here should be familiar to us. Yahweh of hosts is literally Emmanuel, God with us. 4, the author refers to Yahweh as the God of Jacob, once again saying God relates with his people. 5, Yahweh of hosts and the God of Jacob is described as our fortress, thus once again declaring him to be our place of safety, refuge, and strength. And as it was with the other sections, there's so much for us here. You see, living on this side of Jesus' incarnation, life, death, and resurrection, we know God is Emmanuel to the fullest extent. In fact, every Sunday we gather, we experience this reality. Yahweh of hosts, the God of Jacob, who is our fortress, he is with us when we hear his word and partake of his sacraments. Though the mountains are crumbling into the heart of the sea, God is as savingly present now as he was then. Continuing in the next section of the psalm, we're given a God's eye view of history, followed by an address by God himself. Come, behold the works of the Lord, the psalm continues, how he has brought desolations to the earth. He makes wars cease to the end of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns chariots with fire. To say it another way, amid all the chaos that was going on around the globe, the author is trusting Israel to trust that God will bring an end to all the madness. Again, this psalm encourages us in the uncertainty of our times. It's as if the psalmist is yelling at us, listen, remember God's long game. One day things will be on earth as it is in heaven. In the meantime, cling to that hope. Next, to inspire confidence in these promises, God himself comes and speaks in the first person, saying, "Be still and know that I am God." In the Hebrew, be still has to do with stilling one's hands and desisting and ceasing from all activity. What this word is speaking to is that temptation in anxious moments to tighten our grip and wrest control out of God's hands. In Israel's own case, it might have been aligning itself with a foreign power, relying on their own military strength, or even giving in to pagan idolatry. For us, it could be frantic activity, exhausting worry, trying to control every facet of our lives and those around us, numbing ourselves with substances, hoarding our money, or idolatrously hoping in politics. Whatever the case, our psalm says, stop and do nothing. Well, almost nothing. In lieu of choosing the frantic, anxious, and controlling option, God calls us to intimately know who he is. In the context of the psalm, it's an invitation to experience and to understand and to trust him as our refuge, strength, and fortress. It's to come to the one who is an ever-present help in our distress. It's to enter his city and to drink the water that makes glad. So finally, to encourage the stillness, God makes a promise. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted among the earth. Simply put, God's purposes will come to fruition no matter what. And when that happens, all wars will cease and everything on earth will be as it is in heaven. Until then, we sing the refrain the psalmist finishes with. Yahweh of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. So that's the message of Psalm 46 that's so applicable to our times. Amid the trembling mountains and roaring seas and wars that threaten and uncertainty that foams, we need not fear. God is for us, a refuge and a strength, and an ever-present help in time of trouble. More than this, because of that, we can cease our frantic efforts at controlling everything, because God is at work right now, breaking the bow, shattering the spear, and burning the chariots with fire, making war cease. He shall make his will be done on earth as it is in heaven. In the meantime, though, we gather to hear what the Lord has done, is doing, and will do. We experience and partake of his presence in word and sacrament, knowing that God is with us, and because he is with us, we shall not be moved. He will be our help at the break of day. And all this we echo the psalmist's refrain, Yahweh of hosts is with us, the God of Jacob is our fortress. In fact, let's stand right now and echo that refrain as we sing A Mighty Fortress